A massive, massive thank you to all of our amazing channel members whose ongoing support help make these videos possible. Thank you guys so much. It really does mean a lot.
Hello, my fellow kin. Welcome back to the channel and welcome to another tournament recap. I know that last weekend was a pretty good one for Hearthband. For any of you that have been paying attention to kind of like Votann in the meta and tournament placings, with Ronnie Kinney doing exceptionally well with his Fortless Hearthband list winning Cherokee Open. But behind the scenes, I too was at a tournament, a multi-day event, taking Hearthband nonetheless, except, of course, with my own little twist on it being the double land fortress. So in today's episode, we're going to take some time to kind of talk through my list, go through the event, the matchups that we had, and in terms of how I performed, how the list performed, and how I felt it did overall. And I did end up taking 25th at this event. It was a Shark Tank, so I was exceptionally proud of this, getting a pretty good score too, which was 3 wins, 1 draw, and 1 loss. And the 1 draw, as we'll talk about in just a moment, was so frustrating because I ran out of time and I had bottom. So I don't know. We don't know what would have happened, but I was this close to going 4-1 with the list, and that would have made my day. And I played against some really exceptional players at this event as well. So we'll really get to see kind of how this list performed in a really like a high pressure setting, to be honest. So with that said, let's jump in and talk a little bit about the list. Now, in terms of lists, as you can see here, it's pretty simple. If you're a channel member, then you've probably been following along on my Road to Gold series. We'll have part 2 of that coming out really soon. Just finished compiling all the video logs where I've been tracking in terms of like practice games and list development. But you'll know that I settled on Hearthband as the list at the moment that I was pursuing competitively to try to push for a golden ticket with. So the list itself, pretty simple in its entirety here. It's basically take 2 of everything. So I got double calls, double 10-man Hearthguard, 2x3 Swordjacks, 2x3 Thunderkin, 2x3 Pioneers, 2 Land Forts, and then I had originally 2x10 yaegers and carriers, but I made a swap here to 10 yaegers, 1 carrier, and then 10 warriors and a Sagittar to combat squad, and just have the extra OC because this was a teams event, so I wanted to just have the ability to just get like a really quick and reliable differential point for the team if I'm able to just throw 10 OC onto an objective at some point. So the original list itself had Berserks in it. I ended up dropping the Berserks in my test games because I was really disappointed and they did not fit the role I was looking for in this list, which was the ability to threaten something that's potentially behind a wall. So something that my opponent was ready to attack me with next turn, whether it's like 5 Marines or like a bunch of guardsmen, for example. The Berserks just were never really able to deal with that threat reliably. And what I also found was, even in the situations where my opponent would just rush me with like something that the Berserks would potentially be good into profile wise, I still never really needed them to get the job done because of the nature of the list and how it's constructed, having the forts and the Thunderkin here. So I ended up dropping them, and I had the Swordjacks. First time I take Swordjacks since basically the start of the Codex, and I was absolutely satisfied with them. I loved them. I was blown away. They always overperformed for me every time I committed them. They were like the perfect 3-man skirmishing unit that perfectly dealt with things that were behind walls and things that I wasn't able to really interact with the rest of my army. So we'll talk through some of the games now. Here I'll try to keep it all down to under 10 minutes a game, just so we don't make this video run too long. All right, so game 1 here at the event. Get paired into Team Canada just to kick things off right away for day 1. So we get paired into Team Canada, and I'm matched into Chris Haynes on the brand new CSM Marauders detachment. So pretty crazy detachment. The whole army basically hits on 2s for melee and shooting. That's just like flat out the detachment's ability. He has access to fallback, shoot, and charge army wide. He has auto advance 6, advance and charge, uppy downy any infantry unit, and he could blood search any unit that he wants to as well. So just like a super annoying army to deal with. And his list consisted of a giant AC/DC brick. He had 2 giant chosen bricks. One was with Bile, giving it the extra toughness, and then he had another brick with Abaddon, who has like a 4-up invulnerable save aura that you spread to like your whole army basically. So you just hit someone with all 3 of these bricks. and they can't kill it in response, and then you just run them over. So really like a super aggressive attacker kind of list. So we had the AC/DC brick kind of staged up here. This was linchpin, and we were playing on medium terrain and its tipping point. So you can see here kind of like the deployment setup. So my opponent was set up with his AC/DC brick over here on the line, hidden behind this ruin, just ready to attack my expansion. He had cultists that were screening the back out loosely here for my bikes. He then had a rhino that had, I believe, the 10 chosen with bile. He had Abaddon with more chosen inside of this terrain feature over here. And then he had some noise marines that were loosely in the back, ready to cycle in with the rhinos. And then some more noise marines back here as well. I then think down here he had one more rhino that had legionaries and noise marines as well. Over on my side, so I had a pretty standard deployment against this army. So I had my basically everything on the line, staging and ready to stage, I should say, and also kind of screening for my forts. So I had 3 bikes that were here ready to kind of go up into this pocket, this area over here, and potentially screen for my land fortress. I had yaegers that infiltrated up here against the wall for a turn 1 screen, and just to guarantee that I get the ability to hold my expansion for 1 turn. I had 3 jacks. So this was something I actually kind of did throughout the entirety of the event, was I would usually start my jacks outside of the fortress, but like really next to it, like close by. The reason for that is because a lot of my stuff goes in transports or in deep strike, being the 2x10 Hearthguard bricks. So I'm actually a little bit low on activations, and it just helps me to get my opponent to put his pieces down, hopefully before I have to put mine, like my big forts, for example. So it just buys me some time, and then I could just cycle them into the land fortress as well. Or they act as like a small deterrent for like potentially screening or for heroic intervention or things like that if my opponent gets too aggressive with me. So it's just like a little bodyguard unit for my forts, and then they get back inside of the forts on my turn 1. So over here I have my land fortresses. They're going to be holding my 3 Thunderkin. This is the same for every game I play at the event. And then they also have room to hold the 3 sword jacks, which are parked right next to them over here. Not afraid of really being shot. There's no anti-tank range, so my land fortress is just sitting in this ruin. And the idea is that I really want to get my fort to be in this little pocket over here, because this is 5 OC I could dump on the objective, and then I could theoretically have the bike screen as well for an extra 6 OC. And then it really takes my opponent something like a serious piece to actually try to shake me off of this objective and stop me from scoring primary. So I could be quite aggressive with it, and I could also just move up like this way and control the firing lane if I want to over here. But my goal is to kind of just move up over this ruin with an advance, cross it, and then just sit here on the objective. I then have 3 bikes that screen in the back here. Same idea here. I have the carrier who's going to scout into this ruin, so I could do the reactive move back into the transport if I have to. And then I have my other land fortress here with 3 Thunderkin and the jacks that are sitting inside of the wall. Same idea. If my opponent gets really aggressive turn 1 with me, I could always threaten the heroic intervention if I need to, and then the jacks could pick up the whatever 5-man squad gets thrown at me. I have 5 warriors screening my home sticky, and then of course I have to threaten his expansion a Sagittar with some warriors inside of it. So for we do the roll off and I get first turn, so I'm going first here into this aggressive army. So what I essentially do is I get my land fortress with the advance up over this wall, touching this objective, and this is something I usually do in most of my games where I'm running a fort. Is I like to frontline with my land fortresses into most archetypes that I play into. And the reason for this is because they actually do require quite a big commitment to take down, especially for melee armies, unless they're playing like Blood Angels or something like that for Space Marines. But they do take some amount of commitment to deal with. Like if you're playing Emperor's Children, for example, into that army, like the only way they really take one down is if they hit it with like 2 Demon Princes and like a Chaos Lord or something, right? Like it takes a good chunk of the army to interact with this piece, and it draws them out primarily to an objective. So on my turn, I get to hit them with hostile acquisition. That's the idea. So it's either give me my objective or give me like 300 to 400 points of your army. So it allows me to kind of always trade up and always get the benefit of +1 to hit. And it's a tactic that I found actually works pretty well when you're trying to be aggressive and start fights. So land fort moves up, the jacks get inside of the fort. And then the bikes, I end up keeping the bikes behind the fortress over here because realistically, the only piece he has that could reliably hit me here turn 1 is the AC/DC brick. So my idea is the AC/DC brick will move up to here. I'll reactive move and screen and just make this charge like really difficult for my opponent to do. And then he's just kind of like on this objective, and then I get to hit him next turn. So I do some staging, like the carrier comes up, I dump the Jaegers out over here so they could like force a trade. I'm going first, I'm trying to be aggressive and get him to spend his resources. And then I stage up with my Sagittar, I believe, like just over here like this behind this ruin. So I'm ready with, I think it was a 2 on the advance roll. As long as I rolled a 2 on the advance roll, I was able to reach this objective and dump 10 OC onto it, plus the 2 OC of my Sagittar. This land fort over here was aggressively staged as well, so he kind of just pushed up to this point behind this terrain feature here, just so he doesn't tag me in 2 places at the same time. If he decides to pop the plus 6-inch advance, I have a way to kind of like counteract that and not be hit in 2 different places immediately and tied up with my whole army. So we go to my opponent's turn 2, and he, of course, goes for the play with the AC/DC brick. So he brings the AC/DC brick up, and I roll a 1 on the, I believe I roll a 1 on the reactive move here, so I don't actually get to do all that much. And I think he also pops the plus 6-inch move. So he goes pretty far with this squad, taking it basically up to here inside of my ruin just with the move and advance. And I'm not able to actually block the move because I just rolled the 1 on the reactive move, which was unfortunate. And then with the plus 6-inch move, he got like right like beyond that point where I wanted to hold him. So he lands over here and he goes for the charge into the land fortress, and then basically starts trading everywhere else. So over here, he brings the Rhino with the Legios onto this objective over here. So he has like 2 OC, I think, sitting on it. He might have gotten the Legios out. And then over here, he stages. So he brings Abaddon's unit up with an advance into this ruin. So Abby's unit stages here to hit this objective again. And then the Bile unit with the rest of the Chosen are also just sitting in this Rhino ready to hit the middle. So I know next turn I'm getting hit by... Basically, I got an AC/DC brick in my face that has Blood Surge. I have Abaddon's brick with a 4-up invuln that's going to hit me as well on this objective. And then I have Chosen with Bile that are going to run me over in the middle of the table. So on my turn 2, this is kind of where the game, where I got good control of the match, I would say, is I had a choice to make with my Hearthguard. So I could have done a 6-inch deep strike with my Hearthguard and got them like here. And I can't charge, obviously, after the 6-inch deep strike, but it would have put me... I was evaluating if it was worth being in a position here where I gained forward movement versus doing the 9-inch deep strike and going for a charge. And I ended up going for the 9-inch deep strike, so I ended up going further back here, which was the right play in the end, because this squad, this 10-man brick of Hearthguard, shot into the AC/DC brick and killed like everything except for 2 models. And I had also gotten my Steeljacks out this way so that when he does his Blood Surge, if he wants to do it, he goes into my Steeljack unit instead of my Land Fortress. So it pulls him closer towards my Hearthguard brick, which was the plan. So basically, shoot the unit, kill almost everything, and set it up so that if he takes advantage of this Blood Surge, he's going to hit my Steeljack unit, which is like the bodyguard brick, and then my Hearthguard have an easier charge into that squad. And if he doesn't decide to Blood Surge, my 3 Steeljacks are here standing on this objective, ready to just charge in with like a 3 and just clean up whatever's left over because the math favors that. That's what they're here to do. He ends up doing the Blood Surge after I whittled the unit down, and we were both kind of freaking out at how much volume of fire the Hearthguard brick has, because it literally brought the AC/DC brick down to like 3 models. So that took my opponent by surprise. So he ends up surging into the Steeljacks because that way, like, he gets the first activation if I fail to charge with the Hearthguard. But of course, because it's like an 8-inch charge rerollable here, and it's low risk for me, I obviously take it, I make it, and now I get my Hearthguard onto this objective over here, just standing on it and securing this. So now, on this objective, going into my turn 3, I have a Land Fortress, I have 3 bikes, and I have 10 Hearthguard. So I feel pretty good about holding this one for the rest of the game. unless my opponent decides to throw something crazy at it. So for my opponent's turn, he decides to just push all in with this on his turn too. So the Abaddon brick comes out immediately and is ready to crash into my Hearthguard squad. And then this Chosen brick with Bile comes out into the middle over here. So I managed to kind of stall the middle out. I had thrown, I think on my next turn, I throw like the carrier out, the Jaeger's reactive move inside. So then I bring them back out to make a screen here and just kind of try to like hold him in one place at a time. That was kind of my idea, because with the Hearthguard bricks, what I found is they obviously have incredible shooting capabilities, right? It's no surprise to anybody. So by having that squad only have to focus on dealing with a single threat through the shooting and the charging, it makes my life a lot easier. And if I could do that in one place with both squads and then very easily get to the next area without being hit in between, then that's a big win for the Hearthguard brick. So that's what my idea was here. I tried to bottleneck him on this center objective. So I stalled with the Jaegers coming back and the carrier like doing a move block over here like this. So at the very least, he's going to have to come around this way again and lose some movement and lose the center objective. In the meantime, we're obviously trading little pieces like the Noise Marines and the Land Fort sticks out to shoot and things like that, but I'm just going to highlight the most important bits. So Abaddon's here in my face in front of the Hearthguard brick, and in the middle there's the Chosen with Bile. So I have to Rapid Ingress. There's a couple of options that I have. I could go towards the middle, or I could try to secure this objective over here. I end up going with this objective, so I put my 10-man Hearthguard with a Rapid Ingress basically here, like right behind where my other 10-man Hearthguard brick is, like on this ruin over here. And the idea is like, okay, he's going to charge me. I'm going to Overwatch, because the Overwatch is pretty devastating on Marines inside of this detachment. Every 6 onto regular Marines is just straight up a dead Marine, because it's AP4 with lethal hits. So I'm going to set up the Overwatch here for this play, and then I could also theoretically do a Heroic once he lands that charge, and then swing this objective again once he hits it and guarantee I get the points. So it's all about just like guaranteeing you getting the points through that use of the Hearthguard Deep Strike, which you'll see is a recurring theme throughout this video. So I underestimated, this is a matchup thing, I underestimated the shooting output of the Abaddon squad with Chosen because they picked up half my Marines, half of my Hearthguard and the ones that Rapid Ingressed. So I was pretty surprised at that. He picked up 5. And then he charged in, and I Overwatched. I picked up a couple of his Chosen because obviously the squad got whittled down. And then I end up going with the Heroic here. So we end up trading. He picks up, I think he does a multi-charge, and he picks up one squad of 5 Hearthguard with Abaddon alone. But then my brick of Hearthguard, my 10 Hearthguard that were in combat with the Chosen, only lose a couple of models because of the 4-up save. And then after that, I swing and I pick everything up except for Abaddon. So it was actually a very good trade for me here because he spread himself a little thin and got a little bit greedy into the Hearthguard. So he sent Abby into one side and the Chosen into the other. So on the Chosen side, I wasn't really concerned because they're pretty low damage. They're only damage 1. I think they're AP 1 or 2. So they weren't able to chew through all that many of the Hearthguard. But then over on the Abaddon side, Abby did, of course, swing and kill all my Terminators. So I think the Kâhl was left. The Kâhl fought back, did a few wounds to Abby. But basically, I still maintained control of this objective because of all the OC I had in the back here. And I hit the first, his first force, crashed into me. I survived it, and now I was going to get the punch back with my army here. So I end up basically securing this objective for the whole game. And then in the middle here, all he really has left is this Chosen brick with Bile that I'm just slowing down by throwing garbage at it to kind of slow the pace down here. And then he diverts that towards this side, but at that point I end up killing this unit as well, basically, with the double land fortresses coming out and shooting it. And then over here, the other little interesting bit was just being able to deny for 2 turns. So I had the Sagi come out to match the OC of the Rhino. I had the Warriors come out to be able to match the OC of the Legios. And it just kind of caused them to have a little bit of pressure on this side of the table and not just freely own this. So for just, what is it, 145 points, I was able to deny primary for 2 turns on this objective. That was pretty good when I was holding mine because I parked almost my whole army on it. So I got to hold this, and deny this for a couple of turns, and we traded over to middle until the end of the game when now my land forts were able to just drive out and park on these objectives. I love the land forts because another key part here of the game was at this point it was going to be a 13-7 and for the Votann for myself, and my opponent had his squad of cultists that were staged up in this rhino afterwards, ready to come out and just deny primary on both of these objectives for his bottom of turn. So I end up overwatching with the land fortress. And as many of you know, the overwatch is quite significant, especially when you hit the sustained hits too. And I was able to pick up 4 of the cultists, which stopped him from being able to get enough OC on these objectives and stopping him from taking that 13-7 and turning it into potentially like a 12-8 or an 11-9. So I was really able to just kind of control the board with the positioning of the land fortresses, with their firepower, with their durability, while also having the Hearthguard be kind of like this reactive piece that always just doubled down at reinforcing an objective. Like every time they came down, they're there for the objective. So it was a really good game. Honestly, I couldn't believe I got the win, to be honest, but it was crazy. And this detachment is extremely powerful, the CSM one, and we'll see in a little bit too as well. I end up playing into it again. I don't end up having that much of a great game, but I think it's going to be a mainstay for the meta. It just has so many tricks and tools. So great game so far for Hearthband. So next up, we go into Imperial Guard. Now, Guard wasn't my preferred matchup here, but it's what I ended up getting into. And it was on a medium board. Now, my opponent's list for Guard was a pretty standard. I think it's the new one. They're the Grizzled Vets. So he had 2 Dorn Commanders. He had 3 Lemon Russes. So he had 1 Russ here, 1 here. And I think he had a third. He might have had a third. I don't entirely remember. That was probably somewhere here like this. He had a Scout Sentinel that was up here on the line. He had some Bolgrin that were here ready to push towards the middle. He had a Taurox that had a bunch of Kriegsmen that was over here. And then I think he had just a bunch of more infantry units that were kind of on the table or inside of transports ready to just push up stage and then push for the objectives or come out this way like this. Yeah, that was it. He had more Kriegsmen over here, a big 20-man brick or like guardsmen. I don't remember. They're all the same to me. So on my end, I end up doing... So I let my opponent take first deployment because he only has 1 infiltrator and it's Gaunt's Ghosts. And I didn't think he would put Gaunt's Ghosts aggressively on the board, but he actually did, and this caught me by surprise. I think this was a mistake on his part. But he put Gaunt's Ghosts on this objective, strung out like this. And I knew that if I could pick up this unit turn 1, I don't have to screen anymore. And because that unit up, down is, I don't have to screen anymore. And I could really take control of the secondary activation by trying to just activation lock some of his other pieces. So like trying to tie vehicles up and things like that. So I decided to deploy on the line. So I put my 3 bikes here. They were going to scout forward or scout backwards, depending on first turn. I had a land fortress here with the Thunderkin, just safely behind line of sight. We did some pre-measuring. Everything was safe here. And then I had 3 jacks that were standing in this ruin, again, just to get my opponent to put more activations down. In this matchup, turn 1, I'm not going to be sending the jacks in anywhere, so they're going to just get inside of the fort, stage up, and push. 5 warriors on my home screening, 5 warriors in a Sagittar over here that's going to stage up behind this wall, somewhere like this probably, and then push towards the middle or inside of this ruin. I had another land fortress here with more Thunderkin. This was a safe spot. The only thing that was able to reach was one of his tanks, and the range wasn't enough for the anti-tank to meaningfully interact with it. So I ended up just taking a chance of putting it here on the line, because if he decided to bring that vehicle out and trade with his non-anti-tank guns, I would just trade with my whole army into that piece and pick it up. I then had 3 bikes here at the top that are going to kind of just control this area of the board and screen and push for this objective if I need to hold it. And then 3 more jacks here ready to hop inside of the land fortress. I then had my yaegers kind of mirroring what he did up here, except I didn't make them touch the objective, and I kept them like hidden behind this line. And I really wanted to just stop the scout of the Scout Sentinel for getting the extra movement. So basically, I end up getting first turn here as well. And there are a couple key things that happen. So, namely, I'm trying to do a few things. I want to get my land fortress into this position here, because once I'm in this spot, I am untouchable, and I will always control the first activation of what I get to do with my tank. because there's no way he gets across this footprint to shoot into me or wholly within this footprint. It's like literally impossible from this side of the map, right? So if I could just get the fort here, and then I'm in a really good spot where I could come up this way and shoot here. I could come up this way and shoot here. I can get inside of this ruin and shoot here or shoot here like this. It's an amazing place to be, and it's 5 OC that just touches the objective, which is great. So I stage my fort up here. The bikes push forward and go to deal with Gaunt's ghosts. I end up grenading, shooting everything into them, and I pick them up to the last wound. So that was just one relief I didn't have to worry about. I'd gladly trade 3 bikes for that any day of the week. And then my fort comes up like this over here. And I think I end up touching this objective with the yaegers by moving them up on this side of the wall. So from here, there's actually no way my opponent could see them, because just touching this footprint over here like this, like right outside of the footprint, I should say, like hugging the wall, it cuts the angle so that the only way this is visible is if your opponent is wholly within this feature or comes out all the way past that midline. And if he comes past that midline, it's great for Votann, right? That's what we want to do. We want to deal with you in the center of the table. So I stage with the Thunderkin and the Land Fortress over here. I got my 5 Jaegers holding this objective, and then my bikes are staged up over here, ready to go dump OC to deny this objective if I have to, or to hold it. So my opponent also similarly stages up, and a couple big things that happen here. So I'm really playing with going first, trying to get my opponent to expose his resources, right? Get his resources out of the way. So one of the main things that happens is I have my Jaegers that are just barely touching this objective over here. So they could react and move back inside of the carrier. My opponent doesn't want to stick a tank out for this, because I could hit him first with my tanks and my Thunderkin. So what he ends up doing is he brings the Bolgrin out. So the Bolgrin come out and they make it just shy of the objective marker, triggering the reactive move. So the Jaegers run away, because if I don't, he's going to shoot them with something. So they get inside the carrier, and now this squad of Bolgrin is no threat to me. It's not scoring him points because it's not on the objective, and he's not charging anything because there's nothing in range. So it's perfect. I can deal with this next turn on my own terms. And then over here, he ends up bringing the Scout Sentinel up this way to try to shoot into the Jaegers a little bit, and he stages with 20 of his Cadians behind this ruin, like right over here. Over here, he brings his Taurochs onto this objective, and it's not enough OC. I think I just have at this point one of my bikes touching this. So he does deny me for one turn because he has the 2 OC. But then on my next turn, I bring the fort in, and I start trading with his Taurochs. Or I hide the fort like behind this wall like this, touching the objective, and it's still very difficult for him to interact with me. So just really keeping control and playing like super cagey to get my opponent to keep bringing resources out while exposing the minimum amount of things possible for my opponent to interact with. Over in the middle of the table, I put some shots in. I forget what I had visibility on, but I tried putting some shots into the Bolgrin. I don't do all that much. And then really the key plays here, I think, that were the most critical was at this point, going into round 3, I believe, I end up rapid ingressing my my Hearthguard brick, and I bring them up here. My opponent doesn't have all that much to interact with this objective. He has the Scout Sentinel, which is standing here on this objective, and he has his Guardsmen, which are standing over here as well. And I think they end up coming onto this footprint. So once I'm able to deal with these 2 pieces, this objective is mine, especially with the sheer volume of things I have on it, being 3 Sword Jacks, 3 Thunderkin, 3 bikes, and like 10 Hearthguard theoretically, right? So it's just a lot of stuff. This is mine the rest of the game. It's Scorched Earth, and I can just burn it at the end of the game and get my points. So I bring the Hearthguard here because it's like I just need to deal with this. If I could kill this squad of 10, don't have to worry about anything else. This is my objective. And then over in the middle, at one point I end up also rapid ingressing my Hearthguard down here. And I was debating doing a heroic intervention, but it didn't seem worth it because my opponent would still out-OC me. Unless I got really lucky and spiked on the amount of models I killed, it just wasn't really worth the play. So on my next turn, I used them to just walk out and start interacting with everything that was here. And that's exactly what happened. So by the end of the game, by like round 4, my opponent is totally out of resources just because I was able to make these really tiny trades where it's like my really cheap things are requiring you to overextend and commit a lot more resources, so I get to hit you first. And then because of that, my opponent doesn't have enough real resources left at the end of the game to stop me from holding points. I want to call out one thing with the Steeljacks here, which I think totally flipped this and made it into a much easier game to play. So I had my fort that was staged behind this wall, and my opponent had 20 of his Krieg that were over here, ready to just dump Moral Sea on this and keep the game even. I just took my Steeljacks out, I charged behind the wall, and I killed literally like 19 guardsmen with my 3 Steeljacks, like 18 or 19 guardsmen. And it's just crazy, right? It's like, it's 18 attacks, hitting on 3s, and then you're wounding on 2s, you're re-rolling 1s, you have sustained hits 1. It's just insane volume. And every wound that goes through is just a dead Kriegsman, right? It's just a dead guard. So I was able to kill like literally like 18 of them with just 3 Steeljacks, which stopped him from having another threat that goes on to my objective. And then with the pile-ins, I was able to tag something else. With the consolidation, I was able to tag something else. And then towards the end, last round of the game, I started to get a little bit scrappy. His tanks were out. I had to bring my tanks out as well. His tanks trade better into mine than mine do into his. It took like 2 turns to bring down a Rogel Dorn. So what I end up doing is just being really, really aggressive with these bikes. So he has kind of, because all his chaff is gone, he has to bring his tanks onto these objectives. So he has like a Rogel Dorn over here, and he has a Rust that's over here, and he has a Torox that's over here like this. So I bring my 3-man bike squad out, and I just multi-charge. I tag all 3 with my bikes, and now he's going to be hitting on 4s. So it's like I don't even have to worry about this thing anymore, potentially even on 5s if he doesn't have the ability to give them orders. And as the game went on, he was running out of things that provided orders. So his vehicles were starting to hit on 5s at one point, which meant that I could just stand out in the open here, push my way across the board, and slowly pick him up. So by the end of the game here, it ended up being an 18-2 for the Leagues of Votann. So a pretty significant win here, and I was really happy with how the list performed yet again. Because I was able to kind of just control the board with these land fortresses that were really good threats that stopped my opponent from just literally deploying all his tanks on the line. He has to respect them, and it allowed me to transport things like the 3-man Steeljacks, which I thought were absolutely invaluable in this matchup. So we move on to Game 3 here of the night. Game 3 was definitely the hardest one that I had played. This is against our parent team, Slugfest. And I played against the team captain here, Matt McWaters, who was also on Team Canada. So 2 Team Canada players in one day. So we go into this game. He's also playing that new CSM list, the new CSM Marauders detachment here. It's super solid. And I end up getting absolutely destroyed on this map, on this mission, I should say, in this matchup. So basically what happens here, the short of it is I kind of misread the macro strategy, and we were talking about this a little bit after the game. I kind of misread the macro strategy. Whereas in that first game, I was like, okay, front-loading my forts kind of works because it forces him to engage me. That did happen here, but the problem is that I ended up spending too many of my smaller resources in the process, and I didn't realize in that first game that I played into this army that the thing that really helped me win was having these cheap resources alive that my opponent had to blood surge into. That's fundamentally what it was. And in this game here, I was a little bit too liberal with how many resources I was giving him to try to like just stall on primary or be annoying. And that meant that on the turns where he hit me hard with these bricks, I wasn't able to get him to go into something that I didn't care about, right? Like he would blood surge into a land fortress instead of into like 3 Steeljacks, and then I would lose like an activation of shooting. And then I wouldn't even be able to charge him, right? Or he would go into my Hearthguard. That was horrible. He blood surged into my Hearthguard because I just didn't have anything next to him that could soak the hit for me. And then my Hearthguard charge in, which is primarily how I was able to win that first game against the Team Canada players. So that was basically all that happened here. I misplayed some of it. That was mostly on this side of the table. So I was just really, really aggressive. I was screened with my Steeljacks and my land fortresses over here. And what I ended up doing is like I had my yaegers behind this wall. So I had like the carrier up here. I had the Sagittar up here. And it's like now there's 3 things that my opponent could just hit in one shot. And just like run me down with it. And then I was out of these pieces. So when I brought my Hearthguard bricks down to trade, he just has to blood surge into my Hearthguard. That was a mistake. If I had to play this again on this side of the table, I definitely would have put the Jaegers up here like this. The carrier would have stayed back or gone like here like this, so that I could at least have 2 separate screens. I would have given him this objective. I think I was too aggressive to try to hold it. I think I was also going first on this mission, and it was terraform, so I had sent out a lot of my resources to go and touch objectives really early, and then he capitalized on that by just picking up all my junk, and then I was in a situation later in the game where the Blood Surges had to go into my big expensive pieces. So that was unfortunate, lesson learned. The other thing I kind of messed up on this side of the table was I did the same plan of front loading with my forts. I brought my fort up here because on this side of the table, all he really had to interact with my fort was 3 bikes and a rhino that had legionaries and noise marines. So he brings like all of these resources out to deal with this land fortress. And I didn't mind that. That was kind of like the goal. It was to get him to bring all these pieces out. So he ends up stopping me from scoring for a couple of turns here, but I made a mistake. There's twofold. I think the less risky play would have been to just put the bikes on this objective and make a screen. We spoke about this after the game, and just have the bikes act as a screen while the land fortress sits here, and then the land fortress trades into whatever came on this objective. Or use my Hearthguard to rapid ingress somewhere here, and then take control of this objective like I did in the guard game, where it's like I just overload one objective after my opponent committed all his potential resources to deny it, and then it's mine for the rest of the game. And then I would steadily hold this objective and this objective while trading over here and over here. So there were a lot of lessons learned here. My opponent is an incredible player, probably one of the best players in Canada, to be honest, and really just good at seeing a mistake that somebody makes and like exploiting it, like doubling down on that and just making sure that they're totally punished for the misplay. And that's exactly what happened here. So from here, it was just kind of a slaughter because he kept tagging my tank. I'm also a bit of an idiot. I forgot that the land fort could shoot in its own engagement range and its own engagement with the unit. So I spent 2 turns kind of like falling back with my fort and like repeatedly getting tagged when I could have just stayed in combat on the objective and shot the things I was in combat with. I didn't think about that. It was the end of the day. Maybe I was too tired. And then over here, it was really just getting hit by Abaddon and the other 10-man Chosen Brick, and it was just too much for me to handle. I should have just committed the Hearthguard on this side of the table instead when he had all of his army over here, and then this was mine for the rest of the game as well, and we just trade expansions. That's basically it, right? That's all I had to do here, and it would have been a much closer game. So the unfortunate 20-0 for my opponent here. I do think that genuinely this should have been an 18-2 instead for him, because I forgot that I could just stay on the objective and shoot with my truck. But in any case, I'm sure we'll have another rematch soon. All right, so going into day 2 here, game 4. At this point, I'm 2-1. So I'm 2-1. The 4-1 dream is still alive and well, and I get paired into Thousand Suns. I get put on this table here as the leftover one, and I wasn't a big fan. This was, I think, one of the weaker tables for Hearthband because getting the 6-inch deep strike to go off on the center here is kind of tough, and there aren't that many angles without over committing yourself to your opponent's side of the table, like depending on where you want to land. If somebody comes to touch this objective, for instance, and they let you land here, then that's great, right? But if they come on the middle, you have to go outside, so you're either coming down here where you get shot immediately, or you literally can't like fit anywhere else up here. So, like if they're staged. So it just makes it a little bit tougher for me, but this is the map I got dealt, so it is what it is. Now, I was playing against Thousand Suns in this matchup. I've never played into Thousand Suns before, so there was a bit of I think, a knowledge gap in terms of threat. Like, what is the threat priority? What is his macro plan? Like, how does he deal with my army well? And what should I be trying to do or not do into my opponent? So we'll talk a little bit about this one here. And see what went wrong and how I might approach this a little bit differently. So my opponent's list, he had 2 Mutalith Vortex Beasts, he had Magnus, he had a Demon Prince, Rubric Marines with the Flamers, he had 2 squads of the Goats with the bow and arrows on the discs, they're pretty fast. He had some some Zangors, I think, that are screening his back over here, holding his home. And then he had 2 of the infiltrating robots that were over here on this objective, like behind this ruin. So over on my side, I did a typical deployment that I would usually do on this board. So I have my both forts kind of over here like this. Because of how close the center is and both of these objectives are, I decided to keep 3 of my jacks inside of the fort alongside the Thunderkin, just in case I have to trade here turn 1 into the Rubric Marines, because it's the only thing that won't die to the Flamers. And then I had my second fort over here with 3 Thunderkin, and my 3 jacks were behind this wall ready to hop inside, just to bait more drops from my opponent before the game starts. I had my yaegis up here on this objective, kind of ready to go touch it to do an action or hold it behind the wall. 3 bikes that are ready to scout up and then stage behind here, over here, and screen. 5 warriors that are screening like this way. And then I had 3 bikes that were here ready to go attack this objective if I had to, either deny OC or kill whatever he puts on it. And then I had a Sagittar with warriors that was going to stage inside of this ruin for next turn. I think one mistake I made on my deployment is the carrier. I wasn't too sure what I wanted the carrier to do in this matchup. And this comes down to a little bit of inexperience, in my opinion. I think if I had to do this again, I would have had the carrier be on this side of the table instead, and potentially using it as move blocks for whatever was coming up this way. Because he doesn't have fly on the Mutalith Vortex Beasts or on the Demon Prince or on the Terminators. So if I'm able to just use the carrier as a move block piece on these really tight alleyways here, I effectively control my expansion for free for at least 1 turn. Instead, I put it here. I wasn't sure what I needed it to do. And I was like, you know, if I draw something turn 1 in the middle, I needed to be able to interact with that and then potentially hide, maybe like back here. Or use it to attack my opponent's expansion. But I don't think that was the play here. So this was a mistake, and I think this could have helped optimize my scoring this game a little bit. The other thing I made that was a mistake, which we'll talk about as to why that is my use of this second land fortress over here. I was a bit too aggressive with my deployment. I think if I had to play this matchup again, knowing now that this army is capable of picking up 2 land fortresses within 3 activations, so like an MVB, Magnus, and like Terminators could do it, I would definitely hide one of my forts back here. So at the very least, if he full sends to pick up 1 fort, I have one that could like respond by coming up this way, getting into ruin, or sliding down this way and playing down this firing lane. So that's probably how I would change it. I just didn't want to lose too much tempo from being far away from the action, but I think it was necessary given the potency of Thousand Suns damage output and mortal wounds. So in any case, this mission was hidden supply, so this center objective wasn't here. We had one that was like here, like this, and then one that was like this over here, something like that. My opponent gets first. He brings his little robots up onto this objective behind the wall, and then I do like my scouts, obviously. I set them up over here, like my bikes ready to go. And my opponent also had Terminators. He had a 5-man Terminator squad, which I thought was interesting. He started it on the board. I guess he was afraid that I would screen him out too easily with all the chaff. So he started the Terminator squad on the board, and he was going to double move it up so that it just instantly crosses like this line and is able to interact with the board. So in any case, he gets first turn, and he kind of just brings his Mutalith Vortex Beast. I think this one might have been like behind the wall, but he brings it up here this way to start making its way to this objective. This one comes up this way to just kind of like beeline my tanks. And Magnus stages smack in the middle here because he's so fast. He could go like literally any direction and be able to swing around this way or around this way with like 16-inch move, I think, or like double move, something like that. It's crazy. So he sets up like that. He touches his rubrics out on this objective over here. And then he passes turn to me. So at this point, I have the Mutalith Vortex Beast that's kind of like rushing towards my lines with the double fort. And I think this is also where like I didn't know the matchup, so I don't know how potent these things are. Like they do mortal wounds on the movement phase. They can be like sorcerers and cast spells, and then they shoot, and then they also charge. So it's like just a lot to keep track of. My opponent was a gentleman. Every time I asked the question, he tried to make it super clear in terms of what his army did. It was just like information overload for me. Just wasn't familiar with the matchup, so I stalled my clock a little bit here because I just kept asking so many questions and trying to evaluate the value of trades because I just wasn't confident in the matchup. So my logic here was this MVB could theoretically one-shot a fort. Next turn he does it. Like next turn he comes out and attacks it. So if I am going to use my fort, I may as well use it now on my own terms. So I stick one of these land fortresses out. I front load it. I stick a fort out touching this objective. I get 3 Thunderkin out because, again, I don't really know how much I need here. And then I stick this fort up this way just so he could see the tip of the MVB. And then over here, I trade these bikes into the robots, I grenade them, I kill them, and then I take this objective and hide behind the wall. And then I stage with my warriors inside the Sagittar up here. And I think the carrier ends up hiding behind this ruin over here where the Sagittar was previously staged. Over here, everything kind of stages up like I said it would, goes behind this ruin and hides. So I shoot everything into the MVB. I kill it pretty easily. And then it's my opponent's turn, and it's turn 2, and this is where he hits me really hard. So he just brings Magnus around this way, and like these Terminators double move like right onto this objective. I think like he staged them up here, and then they double moved onto this objective. And just with Magnus, oh yeah, and then he brings like these goats down here. So just with Magnus, the goats, and the 5 Terminators, he picks up both land forts. And like that really took me by surprise. That was crazy. So just like between like the mortal wound output, the spells, and then like the actual shooting activation, he rinsed them. He picked up both forts turn 2. So already now I'm like on the back foot, and I'm like, okay, I think I'm going to try just pushing for the draw because I lost like 2 gigantic resources this turn. So I had to decide where I wanted to come rapid ingress, and I had a couple of choices. I could have came to this objective to help reinforce it, or I could have came to this objective down here to try to secure it. And I decided to push for this one because with the -1 to wound flat on these Terminators, I wasn't very confident that I'd be able to chew through them all. And then on top of that, Magnus would then come up and just rinse me. So I decided to push here, and my logic was he has 2 big threats on this side of the table. I want to pull one away. So I want to pull Magnus away. So I think I end up, oh yes, I end up doing the rapid ingress over here. So he brings his MVB out to this objective, and I rapid ingress back here. So my plan is, on my turn, I'm going to just walk up, shoot the MVB, and charge onto this objective. So he has, I think, his MVB up here. He has his 10 goats that moved behind this wall over here. They killed my Bikester on this objective. So I have options, right? I bring my Hearthguard out, I shoot one, I charge the other, I get on this objective with 10 OC, 11 OC with the Kâhl. So that's exactly what I try to do. And then he has his Demon Prince and his Rubrics that are over here. And Magnus, which is, I think, like up here, kind of. So on his turn, we go to my turn, sorry, I should say, and then I end up doing exactly that. So I take control of this objective, and then I was debating if I should 6-inch Deep Strike, because if I 6-inch Deep Strike, I was able to land like right here and interact with the Rubric Marines and the Demon Prince and the goats. And if I did that, all he would have on this side of the table to play would be Magnus. So same idea like I did in the last game where I just totally overload one side of the table. And because this is hidden supplies, it's really attractive for me to do that because there's an objective marker right here. So there's kind of like this little pyramid, this like triangle of objective markers. Jordan is going to have a field day when he sees all these lines. There's like this pyramid of objective markers that I could just hold here. So I end up going with the 6-inch Deep Strike. I'm not sure if this was the right play because maybe there was a world where I brought them up here to deal with this objective instead. But I was running out of time, and this was in round 3. So I end up doing this play, and I shoot everything into this squad, and I actually only kill like 5 of the sorcerers and just a few wounds to the Demon Prince, which was a really bad whiff. And then this squad of Terminators comes up, they killed the MVB in shooting, they charge, they pick up all of these guys behind the wall, and I hold this objective. So on my turn, basically all that's left for me is warriors on my home. Everything here is like dead. I have warriors on my home. I have a Sagittar with 5 warriors over here. I have 10 Terminators here, and I have 10 Terminators here. That's all that's left. So my opponent brings Magnus around the corner, and he puts Magnus into like a full squad of Terminators in front of him with the Demon Prince, and he kills them all except for the Kâhl. And then after that, I just have this squad behind the wall over here. I have enough OC to hold this primary. So it's my turn. It's the last turn of the game. And I just have this big 10-man brick of Terminators left, basically. So I walk them outside, and it's like, now at this point here, I just have to kill one of these 2 things, either the Demon Prince or Magnus, and
I think I'm fine because I have bottom scoring. That's all that's left. It's just a Demon Prince and Magnus and 10 goats. I'm not scared of 10 goats, so I feel like this was a good situation to be in. I send my warriors out to go on this objective and hold it and cleanse it, and then unfortunately I clocked. So I'll never know what happened here, and we tally up the scores because it's dice down on time, and it was exactly to the VP a draw. So I think the actual score was like 38-38 or something, and it was like literally just a clean draw. So unfortunately, it was the 10-10. But I had bottom a game, and I really think if I got to play that one last turn out, I don't know if Magnus or the Demon Prince, whichever one was alive, would have been able to kill the Brick of Hearthguard, the Sagittar, and the Warriors. And then I would just drive out and touch whatever objective was remaining and get the bottom scoring. So it was a really, really tight game. I think here the biggest problem was I just didn't understand what the army did, despite my opponent being really nice and trying to explain it to me. It was just so much to keep track of mentally, and I wasn't comfortable with the output. I would love to play this again and just try to kind of like take what I learned here, incorporate it again, and try to see if I could improve. But a couple deployment issues. Like I said, this land fortress too aggressive, knowing now the output that just Magnus alone has. I would definitely have hidden this behind this fort, behind this ruin. And then if he brought Magnus out to trade, at least I could hit him with one fort, 3 Thunderkin, and then maybe like Hearthguard that come down and reinforce this. And it's a little bit more attractive to me to hold this objective versus giving up completely and going for this one over here. So lesson learned, a really solid game, really tight. I anticipated this one was going to be a loss, 8-12. Ended up pushing for the draw, especially after losing 2 forts in the first round of the game. Or second round of the game, I should say. So we move on to the final game of the event here. At this point, I have 2 wins, 1 loss, 1 draw. And I'm pushing here for that last win. I get put into Emperor's Children. And this is just classic take and hold on medium terrain here with, I think it is Hammer and Anvil deployment. So into EC, my opponent is playing the exact same list I practiced against that my teammate has. The exact same one with the 3 big Demon Princes, the 3 bricks of Noise Marines, and then like the Chaos Lords with the, I don't know, Tormentors or Infractors, whatever they may be. So a pretty straightforward game for me. I know the math is in my favor for land fortresses on this mission against this matchup. So what I do is I always front line. I always put my forts on the line. And it's like, it's again, right? It's like, yes, you might spike and do like a bajillion mortal wounds and then swing and like, even though you're wounding on 5s, maybe pick up a fort. But it's like on average, you need to commit like 400 to 500 points to kill a land fortress on average. So that's exactly what I leveraged here. And then if you do that, I just table you next turn. So I have my forts on the line with the Thunderkin inside. I have my 3 Swordjacks behind this wall. I have a carrier up here because this is just like a really annoying spot to deny your opponent's objective and just get back inside. 3 bikes over here to screen, 5 warriors in the back. Here I got my Sagi with the warriors, 3 jacks in here, and then 3 bikes there. And then I have my yaegers that are just in this little tiny L pocket over here. So if my opponent wants to interact with them, he has to actually drive onto this ruin or like beyond this line so I could play with this side of the table. My opponent was really, really good. So it took me by surprise because he actually managed to play a really cagey game with EC, and he did one play in particular that really threw me off guard. So he went super aggressive with one of his Demon Princes. So his Demon Prince was like staged here holding, being very patient, trading like Noise Marines, or I think it was Infractors on this objective. We'll do some back and forth trading. And then he does kind of like a mini goal turn. So he sends a Chaos Lord with like 5 of the accompanying Marines towards this land fortress. And then he sends 5 more with the other Marines towards this land fortress. And he sends his Demon Prince, whereas I thought the Demon Prince would go for the land fortress, he actually sends the Demon Prince in the back to deal with my bikes. And I thought this was a brilliant play because from this position behind the wall, I can't interact with this Demon Prince, and they're so fast that on the next turn he could swing around and take my home, and I really can't deal with this until after he causes damage with it. So this was a great play by my opponent here, bringing the Demon Prince around this way. So what I end up doing is I do a rapid ingress play with my Hearthguard. So I bring my Hearthguard down over here like this, and it's like I just want to keep them as far away from possible as the Demon Prince in case he decides to just try a long charge into them, and keep them on this side so that at the very least next turn, whatever is here is dead. I could move up this way, potentially charge into this unit that's behind the wall attacking this fort, or shoot whatever's on this objective and take control of it again. So my opponent goes for the charge, I overwatch, I pick up the squad. On average, it's about 5 or 6 dead Marines, which it worked out, and I spiked like an extra one through, so it killed the Chaos Lord as well, which was great. Over here, he charges in with a Chaos Lord and 5 guys, and he actually one-shots the land fortress, which like the chances of that are really low, but the Chaos Lord just like goes Super Saiyan and gets, I think like literally everything was like a lethal hit at AP3, and then I failed like all my saves, like every single one I failed, so he just one-shot the land fortress, which I wasn't expecting. Like usually they're here to tank that first hit for me, but it put him in a position afterwards where he was on this ruin like this, so at the very least I had the option to just shoot him with my Hearthguard. And then over here the Demon Prince charges, does the mortals, kills 2 of the bikes with 6 mortals, and the last bike is here outside of 4 inches, so he can't pile in. So he's stuck on this footprint, touching it like this, which means I get to interact with it on my next turn, and it slows him down 1 turn from doing whatever he wanted to do. So I basically send my bikes up, keep them alive. I'm trying to screen him because he has a Mauler Fiend and another Demon Prince still in reserves at this point. But essentially from here, we end up, so if you look at how the board's positioned, you could see he's kind of like applying a lot of pressure like this way. And I just didn't want to deal with like 2 Demon Princes. So at one point in the game, he literally has like 1 Demon Prince over here. I think like on this side is 1 Demon Prince here and 1 Demon Prince here. And it's like, I didn't want to deal with that. So I end up dealing with this. I kill this Demon Prince, and I decide for the purposes of board control, I'm going to have a way easier time controlling this objective, and this objective. So that's what I do. I just rotate myself and push everything towards these. So on this objective, I have a land fortress that's just sitting on it. He can't interact with it. It's too far from him. I have my Hearthguard, my second set that came down over here with a 6-inch deep strike or a rapid ingress. Yeah, I did a rapid ingress over here like this, and that allowed me on my turn to shoot most of the shots into this Demon Prince over here with the rerolls 1 to wound because it's the closest target. Half the squad into the brick of Noise Marines that were over here, the last piece he had that traded with this objective, and charge back into this unit that was like staged over here behind this ruin, screening my bikes out. So this one rapid ingress play with the Hearthguard basically solidified the win for me because I picked up literally 3 of his activations with 1 Hearthguard brick and took control of a primary with 10 OC. So he was not going to take this back from me easily. So this was an incredibly well-executed play. I think one of the biggest takeaways I had with the Hearthguard brick was learning how to properly use them. When is a good time for you to use them defensively versus when should you be extremely aggressive with your rapid ingress plays and try to flip the board somewhere else. I think that was a really big lesson from this event, and I'm really proud of how I optimized that, I think, going through all of my games. So I ended up taking control of this objective, keeping this objective, and my opponent, all he had left at the end of the game was literally 2 Demon Princes, or just 1 Demon Prince left. I think he had 1 that was over here, sitting on this objective, and then he had 1 of the leaders of the Noise Marines that was alive here. This guy was unkillable. I kept trading, like, I sent a Steeljack in, the Steeljack didn't kill him, he killed the Steeljack in return. I sent a bike in, my solo bike that survived over here, ends up coming down this way and moving up to charge, and he kills the bike as well. I just couldn't kill this one guy on 1 wound. It was hilarious. But anyway, it ends up being a win here for the Leagues of Votann, and I think I largely attribute that to the fact that this Hearthguard brick decided to come down on this side of the table, and that I front-loaded my forts in this matchup to get the fight going and strip away resources from my opponent. I really just wanted him to commit all of his junk, all of his objective play missions, and then all he had left were Demon Princes. And Demon Princes are scary, of course, but they could only go so far and they could only do so much. If they want to hold an objective, they have to stay on it. And because of how the objectives are placed on the map, he can't be everywhere at once. So I was able to just hold this reliably, and then trade with him here. And then I think nobody was on this objective at the end. Another notable thing the Steeljacks did for me here was they had area denial, and there was a Rhino here that was sitting on 6 or 7 wounds or so. The Steeljacks charged in and picked up the Rhino, and it was great. At AP2, I didn't have to worry about it. It was awesome. With 18 attacks on the objective, so hitting on 2s, sustained hits, and rerolling 1s to wound, and then wounding on 5s. AP2 damage 1, it was great. It was perfect. I wouldn't even trust the Berserks to deal with a 5-wound Rhino, I promise you. So that was really, really nice, and it just solidified kind of my opinion of where my list is presently at. So that wraps up my event for me. I ended up getting top 25 out of all 100 players, played against some big-time sharks, ended up getting the win into some of them as well, which was great. And I was, oh man, I was so close to the 4-1. I was so close to it. I ran out of time, and that was so frustrating. But I really want to get practice into that matchup again, because I do think there was a world where I was able to turn that since I had bottom of scoring. But in any case, I was really happy with how the list performed and super proud of myself for doing so well at the event. So that's basically everything I got for you guys today. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment for me down below. We'll have Ronnie's video coming out either this week or the Monday of next week, depending when this one drops, where you're going to see kind of how he played with a fortless build, so a build that had no land fortresses inside. So here you got to see that, yeah, like it is viable to take land fortresses. I played on WTC terrain, maybe there's a difference, but personally, I really like the land fortresses. I think they bring an interesting dynamic to the list, even if you're not optimizing the use of your detachment ability for the reroll 1 to wound. It lets you play a lot cagier, and you could force interactions on areas of the table you otherwise wouldn't be able to, and it forces your opponent to kind of respect your distance a little bit more. So all in all, really loved the list, had a ton of fun with it, and I'm excited to keep exploring this archetype a little bit more, perhaps a mercenary in the next tactical report. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I'll catch you all in the next one.